The weather's turning crisp and there's a hint of fall in the air, and that means it's getting to be cozy soup season. Here with a delicious recipe for creamy broccoli soup is cooking instructor Heide Lang. Welcome back, Heidi. Nice to have you here.
Great to be here.
So this is a great Sunday dish, I feel like, when it's getting kind of chilly out.
It is, but it's also a great dish, believe it or not, for lunches.
Okay, great. It's not too difficult to make?
No, it's not difficult to make, and it holds very well for the entire week. You could make it on a Sunday, have it for dinner, and then use the leftovers for kids' lunches, as long as you use like a BPA-free stainless steel thermos.
Does it freeze well, or probably not?
You know, I've never froze it. I've frozen it before, but I would imagine it would be fine.
Okay.
I would imagine it would be fine. So especially on days like this morning, when it's chilly outside, it's a great time to start thinking about soups. And broccoli is in season now.
Well, that's what you're saying. We're kind of seeing the end of the tomatoes and the corn.
And the end of tomatoes, end of corn, and the farmers markets are teeming with root vegetables, or starting to.
Okay.
So this is great. So let's talk about what we would do. When we started, before we just started now, I just put the broccoli in.
How much broccoli are we talking, do you think?
2.5 pounds. Now you can buy 2 heads, but don't use all of, let's take one of these guys out. See how I've cut, you know how it comes in a head, and there's sometimes a longer stem, so you're gonna take about, 2 inches off of that. You don't want all that, but you are going to cut up then this part of the stem. Let me show you in here. Okay, you'll see that there are little
pieces
of
of stem,
right?
sure.
Because there's a lot of nutrients in there, and that would be really a waste. But too much of it is going to make it a little bit, just a little harder to take too long to cook. Okay, so we've got about 2.5 pounds. If you've got a scale, which I really recommend.
Oh, all right.
About 2.5 pounds of broccoli.
Okay.
For 4 cups.
Fresh broccoli we're
fresh
talking
broccoli,
to, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Fresh broccoli, 4 cups of chicken stock. If you're vegetarian, you can certainly use vegetable stock. Yeah, certainly. So we're going to just cover that for a while, and this is a perfect opportunity.
How long does that typically take? You said about 20 minutes?
I'd say 20 minutes to 30 minutes, which is why I started it just before we started chatting. So we're going to talk a little bit about roux. Roux is the thing that thickens soups. There's lots of ways to thicken soups. A very popular way now that's a little bit healthier is to use a potato.
Oh, okay.
Or 2, or even a sweet potato. But it never really gets the soup quite as creamy as using some flour and some butter. So we have 6 tablespoons of butter here, and we're going to melt that. And this is going to take a little longer than I expected. We're going to mix this around, and then we've got 6 tablespoons of flour. And once this is melted, which it should melt quickly, we're going to quickly whisk this in. And the idea when you're making a roux is to make sure that you don't burn it. So you have to constantly stir it.
Must do in the kitchen for a little bit.
Yeah, it only takes 2 minutes.
Oh, okay.
And it's one of the best ways of thickening a soup. So you can use this technique on other soups too, okay? So we just quickly sprinkle this in. You don't want it to get gloppy though, okay?
So keep mixing it, right?
So keep mixing it. And you can take your eye off of it for about 20 seconds. And if you leave this for too long, it will burn, because butter burns very quickly. And we're not interested in making, there are different kinds of roux. There's a dark roux, and there's a blonde roux. When you were in Louisiana, you had a lot of gumbo.
That's true.
Usually that's made with, and a lot of the soups, a lot of the bisques, the crab kind of based bisques down there are made with a blonde roux.
Okay.
Let's just wear somewhere in between, okay? So while this is cooking, we're going to just check on this again. Let's see what color the broccoli is.
Yeah, so how do we know when the broccoli is done?
That's a great question. We're going to take a fork or a knife. See how it's getting army green? Don't worry about the color. Let's take a stalk and put a knife in it and see where we are.
Ooh,
okay,
it's pretty soft, right?
Yeah, this is beautiful, actually. I'm very pleased. This is a good stove. Let me just take one more piece. Let's see, and if you can cut it like this, it's done. But see how those stalks? That's still a little bit firm. We want to make sure those stalks are done too, because if they're not done, then you're going to have pieces of grit in your. Okay, so this is done. This is brown. Okay. Now we're going to take a little bit of the stock. Now, if this was done, we would actually take, let me make this a little bit lower.
Okay.
The stock and put in a colander. We would put the broccoli in a colander and use the stock from here.
Sure,
okay. So we're going to pretend this is the stock. Okay.
The leftover, sure.
And this is the leftover, and we're going to mix this in.
Now, you mentioned this is broccoli soup for those who don't love broccoli.
Exactly. So the butter and the stock will give it a different flavor, okay?
Ooh.
And now we're going to take this and put it in a bigger pot.
Okay.
Okay? We're going to mix it in here, and we're going to add 3½ cups of milk. And now this is what's known as a bechamel sauce. Let me just put this on. Whoopsies. This is going to cook for about 10 minutes.
Okay.
And it will get as thick as as like a gravy.
Oh, all right.
And when it starts to boil, and you're going to stir this for about, every once in a while so it doesn't burn, because milk will burn off and on the bottom.
Sure.
So when this is done, and you have your broccoli that was drained, and we put the broth in here, we're going to put this right in here.
Okay.
And then we're going to just pretend right now this is a
I
done finished
figured we had
product.
to blend
Yes,
it somehow,
we did.
right?
Right, exactly. So let's move this, and let's just pretend this isn't blended yet. This is actually the final product.
Okay.
Okay, this is what it'll look like, and it's actually a really pretty color. I think part of the reason why kids don't mind it is that it's not as
Green.
weird looking as
Sure.
bright green or army green broccoli soup. So we would take, anyone who's taken a class with me knows that this is my favorite tool of all time.
I just registered for one, actually.
You did?
So I need it, right?
Oh, you absolutely need this. Make sure it comes.
on my list.
Yes, and make sure if anyone buys one of these, make
Yeah.
sure it comes with one that has an attachment as a chopper.
Okay, good to know.
Okay, that's really important because
Got
you
it,
use it for a lot of
Heidi.
things. I'll tell you later all the things you can do with it because it's amazing.
Fabulous.
So you want one that comes on both low and high. So this is a 300 watt. And when the broccoli is in here with this milk concoction with the butter and the this is the roux with the broth. You're going to then put it in, and mind you, will be broccoli, and you're just going to go very gently.
That's going to
like
thicken
this.
it up also,
It's
too,
going
right?
to thicken it up, and then as the last moment, the last hurrah, we have sour cream.
Ooh, I love
And
it.
that's what actually gives it the pretty color, because when you are going to be mixing this with the milk and the broccoli, it still will be a little bit funny looking. This will lighten it up a lot.
Sounds great, Heidi. We are going to dig into this at the end of the show. Thank you so much. The recipe will be over
my
at
pleasure.
WTNH.com.
My pleasure.
Always nice to have you here. Coming up next, local author Mark Rubenstein talks about his latest psychological thriller, Love Gone Mad, when style returns. We'll be right back.